Hey everyone, it's currently 4 a.m., almost 4:20 a.m., unironically. Uh, why am I shooting a video at 4 a.m. in the morning? Well, that's because I could not sleep without suppressing my urge to express my passion about my favorite video game series of all time, and that, of course, is Xenoblade Chronicles. I love this series so much. They just announced the third mainline game almost 12 hours ago at this point, and I just can't help it. I have to express my thoughts in some sort of fashion. And this is not going to be a serious, in depth analysis. It's just going to be an off the cuff, casual discussion. But we will go deep into spoilers. So if you have not played both Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2, then I recommend that you stay away from this video. But before you go, I imagine maybe somebody has stumbled onto this video and they've never played or even watched any Xenoblade game. I recommend watching my Xenoblade retrospective. It's a spoiler-free overview of how each game plays, how their stories differ from each other. Just, it's a good starter point. It's a good introduction if you're interested in the Xenoblade series after this has happened and there's so much buzz around it. And speaking of that buzz, you're probably wondering, why is Xenoblade 3... why is it? Why do they feel the need to point out that it's bringing the worlds of 1 and 2 together? Isn't that obvious? As an outsider, you might be confused. Of course, 3 is a sequel to 1 and 2. 1, 2, 3. It just makes sense. Why is that so special? Well, that's because how they connect 1 and 2 is done in such a special way. It's so remarkably intelligent. It's not in your face. It's a revelation, really. And the fact that we're actually getting a follow-up on that is just, again, if you've actually played both the games, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It really is done in a special way. So I recommend getting into the series if you have not done so. At the very least, watch my retrospective to see if you are interested. So what we're mainly going to do is go through the trailer and just, say what I think in order of what happens. But first, I do want to take a look at the official Nintendo UK website for Xenoblade 3. The reason why we're doing this is because Nintendo has put out several tweets. There's even a bit of information on the official Nintendo of America website for this game. But it's all kind of scattered. It's not as concise as how it is on this website. So despite how ugly it is, you can tell by the fact that I had to crop it. Despite how ugly it is, I'm going to use it just so we can make our lives easier here. So we see the world is Ionios, which I believe they say in the trailer. It's home to 2 hostile nations. So this isn't Alrest, of course, which makes sense, And it's not solely the Bionis and Mechonis. There's a lot more. It takes place in this new world that is created after Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2. This here explains a little something about the 2 nations. We're not going to get into it yet. I want to get into this when we actually see the trailer. But just know it's kind of this typical dark versus light, and then this mechanical technology versus ether, which is the magic of Xenoblade. Now this is where it gets interesting, because if you look at the character with the short hair in these screenshots, everyone, at least most people who played Xenoblade 2, thought that was Nia. Personally, if you watch my reaction video, I was skeptical. Because there's another character I'll point out later on that looked like a Xenoblade 2 character, but they were just clearly not. So this was is it Nia? It looks a lot like her, so it probably is her, but, it just looks so much like her, how could it not be? But it turns out, if we scroll all the way down here, her name is Mio. And I'm surprised she's 4th on this list of characters here. But yeah, she seems to be very prominent in the story, but her name is Mio. It's not Nia. Which, again, very confusing because she has so many of Nia's traits. Even her weapons. The chakrams? Chakrams? I'm sorry, I don't know words. But regardless, I believe this is one of the only places where they confirm all the protagonists' name. So let's go over that real quick. Here's Noah. Here's Lance, I think, or Lance. I want to point out that this character looks a lot like the Indoline people in Xenoblade 2, which I think is really cool. Because the Indoline, I'm not saying all of them were bad people, but they were mainly depicted as the antagonists, right? So I think it's really cool that we have a protagonist that is Indoline, you know, subvert your expectations. And I think there's other examples of subverting expectations that we'll get to. I thought Xenoblade 2 in particular was really great at subverting expectations. So it's nice to see that they follow up on that. We have Uni, who is the healer, according to this. She has a sharp tongue and rough personality, which means she might be my waifu. We have Mio, of course. We have Tyon, who is a smart one. You can tell by his glasses, aside from the text, just like me. He reminds me a lot of Akos. He's pretty tan. Akos was not tan. But I just want to point that out. Akos, I love Akos. I love the entirety of Torna. A lot of villains you'll see, they'll do like very despicable things. Like they'll either burn down a village or kill people in front of you. But Akos, he's just a little shit. It's done so well. And I hope this character is kind of like that, where there's just a certain attitude they have that's very egregious, but also charming. That's my hope for this character. Just because he looks like Akos a little bit. Then there's Senna, or Sina. Now this character is a little important to point out, because out of all the characters here, well, Mio looks like a flesh eater, which is why people also thought, if you see the orb in this, oh god, yeah, okay, just the little crystal there, that's kind of the main reason why most people, including myself, thought it was Nia, because that's a flesh eater. But in terms of just a pure blade, this character seems to be it. There's actually an official artwork. Let me get that real quick. Here we go. Let me put that down. So this character, I already could tell from their ether lines. Blades tend to have ether lines across their body. But there's also a core crystal. I mean, it looks like a core crystal at least, on their chest. And what I like about this, by the way, I have the other characters here. The official artwork, the official character designs were done by the same artist. I feel like it's most obvious with this character. The official artist is the same as Xenoblade 2. And for those who have played Xenoblade 2, which hopefully you have done that by now, you would know the character designs were a little rambunctious for both male and female, believe it or not. But that particularly applied to the blades. They show the most skin out of everybody here. And I think that's so funny, and I appreciate the consistency. The fact that blades, again, Xenoblade 2, whether they're part of the main cast or they're part of the gacha system, the blades tend to have ridiculous outfits or like show skin in general. And I think that's just really cool that they kept that here. So here we go. Hopefully I don't have this too loud. Alright, so right away,
fighting in order to live.
If you didn't know if it was Xenoblade based on the art style, you probably knew based on the voice acting. So right away, I did not notice this. This is a deep cut reference or allusion. So what Noah is playing here is a flute, of course, but that flute has patterns on it. And according to Twitter, various people have pointed this out, but I just have one specific tweet pointed out here. This is by Toad Silly T. The flute bears numerous motifs to Xenoblade 1's UI, and also Zanza, Maineth, and the Monado in general. So if we look at this here, you'll see the examples, but I specifically want to pay attention to Zanza. In this case, it's Zanza's wings that look like the pattern that we see here, right? We want to keep that in mind, because this could just be a motif once again. It could just be, you know, hey, we did it in Xenoblade 1. Obviously, this game has a lot to do with Xenoblade 1. Let's just do it here again. You know, it could just be a reference, a cute nod. But it could have a deeper meaning.
And living to fight. That's the way of our world. Ionios.
Alright, so this whole army here, according to the website, I think they're called Keves or Kivas. Either way, they're the army that uses mechanical weapons. But if you look at their weapons, they look very similar to the blade weapons from Xenoblade 2. Now that could just be coincidence, but I don't know. Like, tell me you wouldn't see some of these weapons, right? And you would think they're just straight out of Xenoblade 2. Like, you just pulled a blade with a sword, right? That's just what that looks like to me. I'm not saying that all these people are drivers, but I do think there's a likely chance that, you know, some of the blade technology or some of the blades in general factor into the whole militarized aspect of this particular faction, the nation, which I think is really sad, because if you remember from Xenoblade 2, the villains, they just didn't have faith that humanity would not stumble back into their ways of destroying each other, basically destroying the world. And you had this beautiful thing where, like, Rex and the group were like, nah, we'll stop it, we'll make sure, we'll get through it. And, well, looks like they're a little wrong. I'm sure at the end of the game it'll be happy again, but it seems like the whole thing about humanity being just a bunch of idiots continues. Not surprising, but I do think it's, like, a little sad after what all the characters in Xenoblade 2 went through. To see that, yeah, blades are, presumably, if I'm right, blades are getting exploited, humans are just being stupid, stuff like that that they're trying to resist and overcome in Xenoblade 2. A lot of these theories I'm about to present are depressing, by the way. I just wanna, it doesn't get much better from here.
Tell me, what would possess you to side with them?
We're fighting because there are enemies to kill.
I refuse to believe you're him.
I knew it. I saw this coming.
You're not.
Alright, sorry. Before we get to this guy, this is where they show a few of the party members. We do see them walking around in the party later on, so they are at least in the party for some time. Might not be permanent. So, the sword. If we look at this, the way it glows, you know, the little circle at the bottom, the sword itself, and just look at the shape of the sword. It looks a lot like the Monado and also Pyra's sword from Xenoblade 2. Now, I have no theory as to why that is. It could just be inspired from those things. But what I find specifically interesting, that I did not notice until recently, kind of has a very well-defined base of that sword. If you look at this picture right here, and you look at Zanza's, that base of that sword, if I looked at every Monado, the Monado that resembled this the most in terms of its shape was this one. The color, of course, just looks like the Monado we all know, but in terms of its shape, it looks like the one that Zanza has, which I thought was very peculiar. This is what just confused me. You have this character who has the same haircut as Van Damme, and even the scar, I'm pretty sure, is similar. Also, Van Damme freaking died, so this is clearly not Van Damme. I don't think it could be an ancestor either, because even though Van Damme, he talks about having a child in one of the battle quotes, it's also, like, implied in that quote that the child is dead. So, I mean, maybe this is like a nephew kind of ancestor thing going on. He also has the same voice actor. I'm pretty sure it's very similar at the very least. If you just listen to it.
Coming.
You're not enemies now.
Fight.
Like, if you played Xenoblade 2, you know, like, that just sounds like Van Damme. And it might be that thing with, like, Torn of the Golden Country. In Torn of the Golden Country, they have a character named Hugo who just looks and sounds like Niall from the main game. Maybe that's the same case here, where it's like, yeah, they are related, and they just decided, you know what, just have the same voice actor, just look pretty similar, you know. That's probably the case here. You know, not making it too subtle, but I did think that was interesting, because that contradicts what we saw about Neo, right? Quote unquote Neo, which we now know is Mio. All right, so here is the people of, what is it? Keves? You know they're Kevis because they're dressed in black. So this also struck my eye. Because this character, they have blonde and long hair. They could just be just a normal character. Or like a leader. They might not have any relation to anybody else. But, I don't know, they just kind of give me like a Shulk, Fiora, Zanza vibe. And they're playing the flute. Which is why, I don't know, I just feel like Zanza just somehow is influenced. It seems weird to say. I'm not saying the whole world of Ionios, Ionios? Whatever, should know how bad this guy was. But it just seems like he has some sort of influence. If not, he is outright worshipped. Which is just really messed up. Just, you see with the flute, you see with the sword a little bit, with its base, you see this character playing the flute as well. Just the whole vibes of the ceremony too seems like kind of like religious or at least mystical. So Kevis is the people in black who use mechanical weapons. Agnes is the people in white, which makes sense because she's part of Agnes and she's wearing white. But you see here, she's playing the same flutes he was playing earlier, and that we see the Kevis people playing. But this time Noah's playing a different flute, a white flute, which probably symbolizes Agnes. But Noah's from Kevis, so maybe this is just a moment in the game where I'm sure music to both nations is important. But I guess this scene, upcoming scene here,
You could try to move forwards again.
gives a little better of an idea. Because according to the website, both of these characters are I think, Offseers, which means they just oversee the soldiers who have died. So this is probably a scene where they're honoring people. I guess they play the flutes to honor the soldiers' deaths. Which is, you know, again, just sadness all around. It's just not a happy game. It's looking like. Oh, and here's the gameplay. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Alright, hold on. Pause here. So the world design. So Xenoblade 2 had more kind of self-contained areas. They were still large, but they were more self-contained. They were more, instead of being like a sprawling overworld, it was more kind of like layered. More verticality. Whereas this is more like Xenoblade 1 or Xenoblade X, where it's just like huge, right? I would actually say it's more like Xenoblade X, where you both have that kind of sprawling plane, but also the verticality. So all you Xenoblade X fans, hey, look, you're getting your moment a little bit here. So if you look on the right, on the very right, there's like a little orb, and we can assume that's a collection orb, like in Xenoblade 1 and X. In Xenoblade 2, they didn't have the orbs, they had collection points. I just feel like both would be good, because sometimes just collecting the collectibles is annoying. I feel like having both methods would just be a nice solution to that. There is the Mechonis sword. This was confirmed. I mean, you could kind of tell just by looking at it, even though it's quite scuffed. So I have a picture right here for those who forget. This is the Mechonis sword, and this is just a remnant of it. Now, why it's there, we don't quite know yet. That's part of the mystery. But according to this quote here in the trailer,
The land pierced by a great sword.
so Vandem, quote unquote, is saying that you're going to a land that was pierced by the great sword. So apparently in the story, this sword somehow ends up piercing the lands once again. And we'll talk about that a bit later when we get to the ending shots.
Sword.
Loving the
Only way
environment.
you're gonna defeat the real enemy.
Shout out to this boat right here. I love this. More aquatic exploration. I say more, but really in the Xenoblade games, you just kind of swim and you hope for the best. There isn't really much aquatic exploration, but here, this time, it's looking like that's going to be different. And that makes sense because this world is a boundless ocean. And it would just make sense that there would be some more traversal in that respect. I'm also hoping that just aquatic battles can maybe happen, because when you're swimming and an enemy encounters you, you're just you're screwed. I don't really think that'll be the case, but I hope there's just some sort of a way to like kind of help with that, especially if they're gonna have a lot of exploration in the water.
Whatever life is lost, I won't let you shoulder it all alone. What good filling up these flickering clocks in our eyes? It'll never replace.
Shout out to these Napon. I don't really have much to say about them, except oh, according to their outfits, they seem to be from the opposing nations here. And the one on the left, my Twitch chat humorously pointed out that it kind of looks like Rex. This is the girl we saw. Oh, I didn't notice the Hyantia wings in this one. Is this the same girl as this? Okay, yeah, okay. Just making sure. I guess this is the casual outfit. Okay, yeah, we see more of her here as well. Nice, nice.
Flickering clocks in our eyes. It'll never replace the friends we've lost. The flame clock, it has to go.
Big enemies. Okay, here we go.
This world. They must be erased without a trace.
Here we go. This is the hugest moment, I think, in the trailer. This is the most massive moment in this trailer. This is the Hyantia mask right here, right? And this is also a similar kind of mask, but not the same. You know, you can just look at them and you kind of know that they have different designs, different color schemes going on. We can assume that they're either the main leader of each nation, or they're like just a prominent figure, right? And these nations are going against each other. Now here's where it gets interesting. If you look at this character, they have the gray hair, and they have the flesh eater crystal. When I saw this, and I'm sure many people thought the same, we thought that this was the same character as this character right here, right? Because this character also has gray hair with the flesh eater crystal. We thought they'd be the same. But since this isn't Nia, I think this character right here is not Mio. They're not the same character. I think this is Nia. I actually am quite confident about that. Okay, so pay attention to the color scheme and just the overall clothing style of this character. And then look at this. Very similar. Obviously the hairstyle is different, but I mean, come on. That has to be an intentional similarity, right? But what convinces me further is that we look at this character. And this character's just hairstyle and just being in Hyantia. They look like they could be Melia from Xenoblade 1, right? And I think that's so interesting because it's crazy. It's crazy because these characters kind of fill a similar role in terms of them being like fan favorites who also happen to get friend zoned. But besides that fact, they're like fan favorite characters, right? They're not the main character, but they're fan favorites. They're very important to the stories of their respective games. And now you have them on opposing nations. Even more interesting, on top of all that, and another thing, is that we've already established that the people in black, the Keves, they are people who are using these mechanical weapons. The people of Agnes, they use the power of ether, which is crazy, because I just said the mechanical weapons look like blade weapons, which are from Xenoblade 2. But Melia is from Xenoblade 1. And Melia and the Hyantia in general are associated with ether. Well, actually, hold on. I almost forgot. We have the ability to hear things. At least I hope you can hear, because otherwise I don't know how you made this far in this video. Check this out.
Ouroboros abhor this world. They must be erased without a trace.
Their voices sound like Melia and Nia. Whereas Mio earlier, if we listen to Mio,
Ask you to side with them.
We're fighting because there are enemies to kill.
Mio like kind of sounds like Nia, but it's to me it's clearly different. It could just be like a different voice that voice actress is doing. But like to me when I look at these two shots and I hear the audio, like, how is it not Melia and Nia? Or at least some sort of descendants of both. And Melia and Nia can be alive for that long due to the nature of their existence. They can live long enough. So it's not like, you know, this is implausible. It's not like this hard read. It's not this crazy prediction. To me, I just think it's kind of logical that this would be a possibility. Hell, I'm sure Monolith Soft knows that we're thinking this. Maybe it's another twist to it. Who knows? The classic Monolith Soft twist.
For us
Alright.
before this world.
Anyway, let's
They must be erased
finally
without
move on
trace.
from that. Alright, here we go. So, I kind of pointed this out. First of all, the music and the visuals here are just breathtaking. I pointed this out during my initial reaction / impressions. This scene right here is very reminiscent of both Xenoblade 1 and Xenoblade 2 in terms of the box art. Like, this will probably be similar to the box art, right? And if we look at the background, Tetsuya Takahashi, the executive producer of this game, has already confirmed that this is the Mechonis sword, as we talked about, piercing the Orion Titan. And that's crazy to me. That's crazy to me. Because if we look at the box arts from Xenoblade 1, again, the grassy plain, and they have Mechonis in the background, then you have this, the two characters, much like the two characters on the grassy plain, but specifically Uriah is the Titan that they chose to have on the cover. And that just blows my mind, because Tetsuya Takahashi, I'm pretty sure, so this is from the official Nintendo website, an introduction from executive director, my bad, not producer, executive director Tetsuya Takahashi. He says specifically the key visual, which is this, a broken greatsword of Mechonis and the body of the Orion Titan with a gaping wounds. I'm kind of blocking that. Gaping wounds. And then he says, this visual was conceived quite some time ago. We came up with it sometime between the end of development of Xenoblade Chronicles and the beginning of development of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So the fact that we have all these connections just with this one image, compared to these box arts, compared to the context of Xenoblade 3's story of connecting the worlds, and just the context of Uriah and the Mechonis sword individually, does that not just blow your minds? Isn't that like the most gigantic IQ like plan for the Xenoblade trilogy? That is crazy to me. I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just overly impressed by this. I thought that was just like, wow. Like, they really thought ahead. They really thought ahead about this. It's so crazy. Like, come on. Just, you could combine both box arts and you get 3, and it completely makes sense within the context of the story and how we got here, and just, and thematically, alright. I hope you understand, like, why that's so, like, impressive to me. I just thought, like, this one visual alone just sums up, like, how just curious we should all be about Xenoblade 3. This is pretty much the end of the trailer here. I'm loving the flute music, by the way. It still sounds like Xenoblade, but it has, like, a different touch to it. Its own identity, which I like a lot. The 3 has this pattern on it, and there's this tweet here that kind of goes into it by Milk Toast Fabricated Toast. The emblem on Noah's hand is similar to the symbol you can see on the Xenoblade 3 logo. See that symbol there? As well as this. Looks pretty similar, but also, if you look at the trailer, I noticed while I was talking about all this that this character right here, the blonde one, has the same symbol as on their hands. This character has it. And these characters are all from Kevis. That feeds into my theory that, like, for some reason, whether it's Melia or whoever, that leader is, like, making Kevis this kind of more, like, not religious, but just more of a, I guess, traditional disciplines nation, as opposed to a more free one, I guess you want to say. Again, I mean, I don't know. To me, to me, this was sus. Am I the only one? I don't know. It's a beautiful scene, but it's also kind of sus. Maybe it's just me. Oh, by the way, September 22. Thank goodness. Like, it's crazy that this game, it already looks so far in development. When you think back to Xenoblade 2, that was announced in January of 2017. And it looked a little rough, you know? And then that game came out 12 months later, basically, in December. And still, you know, I love Xenoblade 2. I think it's a fantastic game. It's my favorite Xenoblade game. But there's still aspects of it you can tell that are a little rough because of, like, the development process, right? And that was an 11 to 12 month span. Whereas this game, it's being announced in February. It's coming out in September. That's a 7-month gap. It just, like, they really saved it. They really made sure to put in the time, as much time as they needed. They made sure to announce it when it could look just awe-inspiring. I really just love that. I love that they're able to get this out in a really a great time of the year as well for video games. Man, it's a dream come true, honestly. I love that it just looks as good as it does, and it's coming out sooner than we thought. Just that combination is just chef's kiss for any game, right? Any movie, anything. I'm pretty sure Pyre and Mythra will make an appearance. I think they're going to be revealed during the June Direct, or some Direct closer to the release of this game. Pyre and Mythra, they should function as normal blades at this point. They no longer have the power of the Aegis, but because they're normal blades, they should be just like your average blade out there who can live as long as they can, as long as they have their core crystal intact. It would be so heartbroken if they revealed that their core crystal got shattered. That would be so depressing. But I don't think so. I think Pyre and Mythra will play a role in this. We just haven't seen it yet. I just think this has the potential to be such a heartbreaking game, but also a beautiful one. Like, this can all tie together. The fact that they thought of all this, like, it's not uncommon for writers to think of these things ahead of time. I'm not trying to say this is, like, crazy that they thought of this. It's just to see all this realized. That's my point. To see it all so well realized, and the planes, you can probably hear many vehicles outside. It's 5 a.m. We've made it. It's too early in the morning for this, or too late at night in my case. But I just love Xenoblade Chronicles so much, and I wanted to share some of my thoughts. I could be entirely wrong about many things. I don't really care. I'd rather be wrong and be surprised, you know? But at the very least, I hope you can feel my passion for this series, and I hope you gained a little bit of that in return. You know, I just want this fandom to grow, and I also want the existing fans to just be more excited about the series. You know I was hard on the fans during my retrospective, but there's plenty of Xenoblade fans that I look up to and follow on Twitter and YouTube and all that. I just want to keep seeing that love continue. But anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Hope you're entertained. And I will see you probably on Twitch. I don't make YouTube videos much anymore. But hopefully whenever I do see you, it will be at a time that is not at 5 a.m.